I stood alone at my baby's funeral while my parents were at my brother's pool party. If you've ever felt like your family didn't care, this story might break your heart or help you heal. My name is Abigail and I'm 29 years old. This story is hard for me to tell, but I know I'm not the only one who's been hurt by the people who were supposed to love them the most. It all started on a cold morning in January when I gave birth to my daughter, Emily. She was only 6 pounds with my blue eyes and her father Michael's dark hair. The moment I held her, I felt a love I had never known. Michael and I were overjoyed. We had waited for this moment for so long. His parents cried tears of joy at the hospital, brought food, gifts, and even made a scrapbook with her first photo. My parents, they showed up the next day, stayed 45 minutes, and left early because my mom had a hair appointment. That should have told me everything I needed to know. Growing up, I was always the other child. My brother Jason, now 32, was the golden boy. My parents, Margaret and Richard, made sure the world revolved around him. When he joined the soccer team in 5th grade, they threw him a backyard barbecue with 40 guests. When I got into the honors program the same year, I got a pat on the head and a half smile. "It's nice, Abby," my mom said. "Now, Jason, tell us about your game." By high school, I stopped expecting them to notice me. I worked hard, got straight A's, and quietly applied for scholarships. I never asked for help because I knew Jason would always come first. In college, I met Michael. His family was warm, loving, and celebrated everything from his smallest win to the big milestones. At first, I thought it was weird. I wasn't used to people actually caring. But over time, I realized that was what real love looked like. Michael and I got married 3 years ago. We bought a little home 40 minutes from my parents and an hour from his. The distance wasn't random. I needed space. When I told my parents I was pregnant, they said, "Oh, that's nice. Did Jason tell you he might get promoted?" Michael's parents, on the other hand, planned the baby shower, helped set up the nursery, and sent weekly parenting tips. The shower was beautiful, but my parents, they barely talked to me. They spent most of the day talking about Jason's trip to the Bahamas. Still, I tried. I sent weekly photo updates after Emily was born. Her first smile, her first laugh, her first time rolling over. My mom replied once with a thumbs up emoji. My dad didn't respond at all. Then one day, Jason announced his engagement to Stephanie. My parents lost their minds with excitement. Calls, plans, venue tours, it was all about Jason again. The problem? His engagement party was scheduled for the same weekend as Emily's church dedication, a special ceremony we had invited my parents 2 weeks earlier. When I reminded my mom, she said, "Oh, we'll have to skip the baby thing. This is Jason's engagement. That's once in a lifetime." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just nodded, as always. Emily got a cold about a week before it happened. Nothing serious, just a runny nose. Her pediatrician said it would pass. I stayed home from work to care for her. By Monday, she seemed fine, happy, smiling, eating. That night, we put her to sleep in her crib. We kissed her goodnight. She clutched her favorite stuffed bunny and drifted off. At 6 a.m., I woke up for my hospital shift. But the baby monitor was quiet. Too quiet. I rushed into her room. "Emily?" I whispered. She didn't move. Her cheek felt cold. My scream woke Michael. He ran in and tried CPR. I called 911. The paramedics came, but it was too late. Emily had passed away from sudden infant death syndrome. Everything after that felt like a dream I couldn't wake up from. The doctor said, "I'm so sorry." Michael collapsed against the wall. I stood frozen. We had done everything right. She slept on her back. We didn't use blankets. We followed all the rules. And still, we lost her. We held her in the hospital for hours, kissed her tiny forehead, memorized every feature. Then I called my parents. I was shaking. "Mom," I whispered, "Emily died last night. Sid is. We're at the hospital." She paused. "Oh, that's terrible. That's it. No tears. No, we're on our way." Just a flat statement. "We need to plan the funeral," I said. "Let us know the details," she replied. Michael's parents dropped everything and rushed to us. They helped with the funeral, brought food, arranged flowers. They cried with us. My parents called once. "When's the funeral?" "Friday, 11 a.m., Greenview Cemetery." "Oh, that's the day of Jason's pool party." I blinked. "What? We already committed. All the guests are invited. You understand, right?" "No, I don't understand," I said. "This is your granddaughter's funeral." My mom sighed. "Abby, it's just a baby. Jason's party matters more now. You'll have more kids. This party is a big deal." That was the moment something inside me broke. Not just because I had lost my daughter, but because even in my deepest grief, I was still second best. They didn't come to the funeral. I stood there alone, holding Michael's hand, watching my baby's tiny white casket go into the ground. And all I could think was, they chose a party over their own granddaughter. But this story doesn't end here, because in time, they would pay for that choice. The days after the funeral felt like a long, dark blur. I barely remember the drive home. I don't remember what I ate or if I slept. All I remember is the silence in the house. Emily's room was still there. Her crib, her soft yellow walls, the stuffed animals, the mobile that played lullabies, all untouched. I couldn't go in. Not yet. Michael tried to stay strong, but I could see the cracks in him too. We would sit on the couch in silence for hours, holding hands, crying without saying a word. Sometimes he would just stare at her photo and whisper, "She should be here." His parents stayed with us for a few days. They cooked meals we didn't eat, cleaned rooms we didn't use, talked gently about grief, loss, healing. They never pushed, just stayed close. That kind of love, I'll never forget. My parents? They never called. Not the day of the funeral, not the day after, not the week after. I waited. At first I gave them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they were too ashamed. Maybe they'd show up, say something, do anything to show they cared. But nothing came. Then 3 weeks later, I got a group text from my mom. Photos from Jason's pool party. He proposed. Attached were 10 photos of Jason and Stephanie smiling in front of a backyard setup with floating candles, champagne, and a "she said yes" sign. I stared at the screen. Not a single message asking how I was. No mention of Emily. Just party pictures. Michael saw my face and gently took the phone from me. He didn't say a word. Just walked into our bedroom and closed the door. That night something inside me shifted. Until that point, I had always tried to be the better daughter. The one who forgave. The one who stayed quiet. The one who didn't make waves. I had spent my entire life shrinking myself just to be tolerated by people who never saw my worth. But now they had gone too far. They hadn't just ignored me. They had ignored Emily. They had made it clear she never mattered to them. And if Emily didn't matter, neither did they. I made a decision that night. One I had been too scared to make my whole life. I would cut them off. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't send angry messages. I wouldn't try to make them understand. Because they never would. Instead, I would go silent. No updates. No texts. No birthdays. Nothing. They would live their lives pretending I was too sensitive, too emotional, too distant, but they would never hear from me again. Weeks turned into months. Spring came, then summer. I started seeing a grief counselor. Michael and I attended therapy sessions together. We took short walks. Slowly, painfully, we began to rebuild a life without Emily. Michael's parents continued visiting, always checking in. They treated us like we were made of glass, but they never looked away. They stayed. They carried us when we couldn't stand on our own. My parents never reached out. Once I saw a post my mother made on Facebook about Jason and Stephanie's wedding venue. So proud of our son, and soon-to-be daughter-in-law. Can't wait to celebrate love. There was no mention of the granddaughter they had lost just months earlier. It hurt. Of course it did. But it didn't surprise me anymore. Then one day, out of nowhere, I got a letter. It wasn't from my parents. It was from my Aunt Sharon, my mother's younger sister. We hadn't spoken in years, mostly because Sharon had always been the black sheep of the family. She moved to Oregon, started a bakery, and lived a quiet life far from family drama. The letter was short, handwritten. "Abigail, I just heard about Emily. I'm so sorry. I can't believe no one told me. I had to find out from an old coworker who saw your daughter's name in the obituary. You didn't deserve this. I've always known your parents treated you unfairly. I just didn't know how bad it had gotten. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I miss you. Love, Sharon." I cried reading it. It was the first real acknowledgement from anyone in my family that Emily had existed, that I had mattered, that what happened wasn't okay. I wrote back, and slowly, Sharon and I began talking. She told me stories from when I was little, how I always wanted to help in the kitchen, how I used to sing to her cat, how proud she had been when I graduated nursing school. I realized something then. I hadn't just lost my daughter. I had lost pieces of myself too, pieces my parents had buried under years of favoritism and neglect. But now, I was digging them back up, with help from Michael, from his parents, from Sharon, and from the tiny memory of Emily, who had shown me what real unconditional love felt like, even if only for 6 short months. One morning, about 8 months after Emily's passing, I woke up and knew it was time. Time to take back the final piece of my power, not through anger, but through truth. I opened my laptop, created a new email, attached a single photo, Emily's tiny white casket, and typed this: "Mom, Dad, this is what you chose to miss. Not a party, not a brunch, your granddaughter's funeral. This is the moment you traded for cocktails and pool games. I hope it was worth it. You won't hear from me again. Abigail." Then I hit send. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't need one. I had finally said the thing I was never allowed to say. 2 weeks after I sent the email, there was still no reply. No message. No call. No sign they even read it. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself I didn't expect anything. But deep down, a small, stubborn part of me still hoped. Hoped they would realize what they had done. Hoped they would finally show some regret, some emotion, some humanity. That part of me died for good on a Sunday morning. Michael and I were having a quiet breakfast. The TV was on in the background, some weekend morning show with local events. I wasn't really paying attention until I heard a familiar name. Jason Matthews and fiancée Stephanie Willis will be hosting their second engagement party this weekend at the Oak Ridge Country Club. The family, known for its charity work and business ties in the community, is planning a lavish affair for over 200 guests. I stared at the screen. They were showing clips from the first party, the same one my parents chose over Emily's funeral. There they were, my mother and father, laughing, smiling, holding champagne glasses. Michael muted the TV. I just sat there, frozen. Why are they being called a charitable family? I asked out loud.
bitterness rising in my throat. They couldn't even be there for their own granddaughter. Michael reached across the table and took my hand. They only care about what makes them look good. That's all it's ever been. He was right, but I wasn't angry anymore. I was tired, so tired. That same day I opened Facebook and finally did what I should have done months ago. I blocked them, all of them. My mother, my father, Jason, Stephanie. No more photos, no more updates, no more pretending. I also set my profile to private. And then, I created a second separate account, under my middle name, just so I could share photos and memories of Emily with the people who truly cared. Michael's family, my coworkers, a few college friends, and Aunt Sharon. Sharon commented on every post, sometimes with hearts, sometimes with full paragraphs about how beautiful Emily was, how proud I should be, how strong I had become.
She even mailed me a handmade quilt stitched with tiny birds, butterflies, and Emily's name in soft pink thread. That gift meant more than 1,000 empty apologies ever could. One afternoon, I got a message from an old friend from high school, Lindsay. We hadn't spoken in years, but she had found my private account through a mutual friend. Her message was simple. I just wanted to say I saw your tribute post to your daughter. I remember you from school. You were always the quiet, kind one. I had no idea you went through this. I'm so sorry for your loss. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. That message stayed with me because it reminded me that people do care, sometimes the ones we least expect. It also made me realize something. I wasn't alone. Not really. There are so many people in the world who carry grief, betrayal, and silent heartbreak. People who've been ignored, mistreated, or forgotten by those who were supposed to love them most. And maybe my story could help someone else feel seen, so I decided to write it. I sat down one night and began typing. I started with, I'm Abigail, I'm 29, and I stood alone at my daughter's funeral while my parents attended my brother's pool party. The words poured out like a flood, all the memories, the pain, the betrayal, the silence. I didn't sugarcoat anything. When I was done, I sent the story anonymously to a grief support blog that allowed real stories from real people. I didn't expect it to go anywhere. But a few days later, I got an email from the site editor. Your story touched our entire team. With your permission, we'd like to feature it on our homepage this month. I gave them permission. Within a week, the story had thousands of views. Comments poured in. Strangers from all over the country wrote things like, "You are so strong. I'm so sorry for what you went through. Emily was lucky to have you. I also lost a child to SIDS, and my family didn't show up either. You're not alone. This story made me cry. Thank you for sharing your heart." Some people even said they decided to cut off toxic family members after reading it, that they found the courage to speak up. Reading those comments felt like breathing after being underwater for too long. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Then something unexpected happened. Jason's fiancée, Stephanie, reached out. Not through social media. She sent a handwritten letter just like Sharon had. Abigail, I know we don't know each other well, and maybe you don't want to hear from me, but I had to write. I read your story. Someone shared it with me without knowing the full connection. I cried the whole way through. I had no idea your parents missed Emily's funeral. Jason never told me. Please know, I don't support what they did. I think it's horrible. I'm so sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry for the pain they caused. I hope one day you can find peace. With sympathy, Stephanie. I sat with that letter for hours. She didn't ask to be forgiven. She didn't try to defend Jason. She didn't excuse anything. She just said sorry, and that meant something. It's been over a year now. Emily would have turned 2 this past January. We visited her grave with balloons, flowers, and a stuffed bunny. Michael and I held each other and cried, but we also smiled. We talked to her out loud, like she could hear us, because maybe she could. I still miss her every day. That ache doesn't go away, but I've learned how to carry it without letting it destroy me. And I've learned that sometimes the people who break us don't deserve a seat in our healing. Family is not about blood. It's about love, presence, and choice. And I choose peace. I choose truth. I choose people who choose me back. It started with a gala invitation. Michael and I weren't the type to attend charity events, especially not since Emily died. But his firm had sponsored a local children's hospital fundraiser, and they needed someone to represent them. Michael asked if I wanted to go. At first I said no, but then he said, "Your story helped thousands of people. You're a pediatric nurse. This event is for kids. Maybe it's time." He was right. I pulled a dress from the back of my closet. It was soft green, Emily's birthstone color. I curled my hair and wore the necklace Michael gave me after the funeral. It had a tiny letter E on it. I hadn't worn it in public until that night. The event was at the same country club Jason and Stephanie had used for their second engagement party. When we arrived, my stomach tightened, but I kept my head high. The ballroom was full of polished people, clinking glasses, smiling too much. I recognized a few faces from the local news and community boards. We stayed near the back, close to the sponsor table. About an hour in, something strange happened. A woman approached me, probably in her late 50s, sharp blazer, silver glasses. "Are you Abigail Matthews?" she asked softly. "Yes," I said, cautious. She smiled gently. I read your story on the grief site. I wanted to thank you. I lost my granddaughter last year. Your words made me feel less alone. I blinked, surprised. Thank you, that means a lot. Then a second woman came up, then a third, all quietly thanking me. Some hugged me. Michael stood beside me, holding my hand tighter every time. People I didn't know knew me because they had seen me at my most broken and still saw value in what I shared. Later that evening, as people were finishing dessert, a local journalist was introduced as the night's keynote speaker. To close this evening, the host said, "Please welcome Madison Kent, whose recent series on family dynamics and silent grief has gained national attention." Michael and I looked at each other. I'd read some of her work, thoughtful, bold, deep dives into emotional wounds people usually hide. She stepped up to the microphone, and then everything changed. She began talking about how some families fail to protect their most vulnerable, especially children, about the emotional consequences of neglect and favoritism. Then she paused. "There's one story," she said, "that stopped me in my tracks. A story of a young woman named Abigail. She lost her daughter to SIDS and had to bury her alone because her parents chose a party instead of a funeral." Gasps rippled through the room. "I reached out to Abigail," she continued, "and while she wished to remain quiet at first, her honesty inspired thousands. I asked her if I could write about it for a broader audience. She said yes, on one condition: no names." My breath caught in my throat. I had said yes, quietly, weeks ago, because I was tired of secrets. Madison went on to explain the pain of emotional invisibility, the damage of being the less important child, the long-term cost of always being second place. She didn't say my parents' names, but then someone else did. From behind me, a woman whispered, "Isn't that the Matthews family? Richard and Margaret?" Another murmured, "Wasn't their son the one with the big engagement party last year?" I stayed seated, still, silent, my hands clenched tight in my lap. I didn't need to say a word. The truth had already found its way out. The article came out the next week. It didn't name names, but people put the pieces together fast. Within days, there were whispers in my parents' social circles, questions, gossip. A few of their friends unfollowed them online. Some even reached out to me quietly, saying things like, "I had no idea, and I'm so sorry, Abigail." Then the newspaper ran a follow-up. "When appearances hide neglect, the cost of being the forgotten child." Jason called me the next day. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "Abby, it's Jason. I don't know what you're trying to do here, but it's really messing with Mom and Dad. They're saying people are treating them differently. They feel humiliated. If this is your idea of revenge, congratulations, you got it." I listened to that voicemail twice, then deleted it. He didn't ask how I was, or mention Emily. Still just about Mom and Dad. Still just about their reputation. It was never about love, only image. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a short note, written in my mother's handwriting. "Abigail, we read the articles. If this is how you choose to grieve, we can't stop you. But you've embarrassed this family. You've taken a private loss and made it public. We hope one day you'll come to your senses. Until then, don't contact us." I laughed. For the first time in months, I actually laughed, because it confirmed everything I had ever known. Even when faced with the truth, they didn't feel regret. They felt exposed. That letter wasn't about Emily, or sorrow, or family. It was about them. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel hurt by it. I felt free. That weekend, I brought fresh flowers to Emily's grave. Michael came too. As always, we sat in the grass and talked to her. "Your story is helping people," I whispered to her tiny headstone. "You mattered. You still do." I watched the wind move through the trees, and I thought about how grief can become something else, something honest, something strong, something that doesn't destroy you, but shapes you into someone new. Spring arrived late that year. The trees outside our house were slow to bloom, as if the cold was reluctant to leave. I understood that feeling. Grief wasn't something you walked away from. It lived inside you, quietly. But something inside me had started to shift. I wasn't just grieving anymore. I was growing. Michael noticed it too. "You're smiling more," he said one morning as we ate breakfast together. "It's nice to see your eyes look alive again." I smiled at him, feeling a little guilt. Some days I still feel broken. He reached across the table and took my hand. "Broken doesn't mean finished, Abby. It means you survived something most people couldn't. That's not weakness. That's power." Those words stayed with me. A few weeks later, my supervisor at the hospital called me into her office. "I know things have been hard," she began, "but I wanted to ask if you'd consider taking on something new. We're opening a support group for grieving parents, and we need someone with compassion, experience, and strength." I froze. She continued, "You don't have to say yes. Just think about it. The families would be lucky to have you." That night I told Michael, "What if it's too much?" I asked him, "What if it's exactly what you need?" He replied. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of Emily's short life. The first smile, her tiny laugh, the way she held my finger when she slept. I thought about all the parents out there with empty cribs and quiet nurseries. Maybe I could help them feel less alone.
The next day, I said yes. The support group started small, 3 parents, 2 moms and 1 dad. We met in a quiet room in the hospital on Thursday evenings. No one had to say anything if they didn't want to. Some just cried, others brought pictures. One mom brought her son's blanket and held it the entire hour. I never gave advice. I just listened. I shared my story when it felt right. And over time, more parents joined. We laughed sometimes. We cried often. We lit candles for anniversaries. We remembered birthdays that would never be celebrated. Grief has no timeline, but sharing it makes the weight lighter. That room became a space where pain turned into connection. Then one afternoon, I got an email from Madison Kent, the journalist who had told my story. Abigail, she wrote, PBS is doing a special on grief, parenting and invisible pain. They want to feature real voices. I think you'd be perfect. No pressure, but if you're open to it, I'd love to connect you with the producer. I stared at the screen for a long time. My first reaction was fear. What would people think? What would my parents do? But then I remembered, I wasn't doing this for them. I was doing this for Emily. And for every parent who ever stood alone at a funeral while the world celebrated something else. I wrote back, yes. The PBS special aired that fall. It was called When Love Is Not Enough, The Silence After Loss. I sat with Michael on our couch, tissues in hand, heart racing. They showed pieces of my interview, my voice steady but soft. I talked about the moment I found Emily, the silence in the house, the way my parents chose a pool party over goodbye. But I also spoke about hope, about how love doesn't die when a child does, about how healing doesn't mean forgetting. I ended with this. I used to think I was weak for needing people to show up for me, but I've learned something. Strength isn't doing everything alone. Strength is loving someone so much that even when the world turns away, you keep going. You keep loving them out loud. A few days later, my inbox flooded with messages. Parents, nurses, teachers, strangers. Some wrote just one line. Thank you for telling my story too. Others shared paragraphs of pain and resilience. Even a woman from my high school messaged me. I'm so sorry I never saw what you were going through. I wish I had been a better friend. For once I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. Not because of fame, but because of truth. My parents never responded. Not to the show, not to the article, not to anything. They disappeared completely. Jason unfriended me online. Stephanie blocked me. And honestly, that was okay. I stopped waiting for apologies from people who didn't see me. Even when I was screaming inside, I let go. Not because they deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. A year after Emily's funeral, I visited her grave with something new. A small white box. Inside was a letter I'd written her on her birthday, a copy of the PBS special, a photo of our support group, and a tiny paper crane, a symbol of peace. I buried the box beneath the flowers, right next to her headstone. Michael stood beside me, wrapping his arm around my shoulders. She changed everything, he whispered. I nodded. She still is. And here's the last thing I'll tell you. If you're watching this from a place of deep grief, if you feel forgotten, unimportant, or alone, you're not. Your story matters. Your love matters. And one day you'll look back and realize you didn't just survive. You rose, like I did, not because of who left, but because of what you chose next.